Welcome, everybody, to this amazing conversation with Anand Sanghvi. We just came off of a great conversation via Zoom, and that podcast, inclusive of this conversation today, will be available in the next week or two on the Wall Street Coach podcast. Thank you so much for coming. Hopefully, you guys are going to get a lot of questions answered today. I'm trying to add you as a speaker right now. And let's see, I think that worked. It says it's connecting. We'll give it a minute. All right. There you are. You are live.
Hey, everybody.
And, it's so good to have you here. And I presume a lot of people in our space today know who you are, Anand, but I'm going to read a little bit about him, just for those who maybe don't know as much about him as you need to. Of course, Sanghvi is a professional large cap options and futures trader and the founder and leading trading educator at Sanghvi. He successfully traded equities and options since 2006, and he launched his first hedge fund, Sanghvi Capital Partners, in 2012. He's going to talk a little bit about his story evolving from Boston hustler to a company founder and hedge fund partner. His hope is really to inspire students around the world, help them understand themselves as traders. As an educator, his goal is really to teach the world how the option markets work and what it really means to be a trader. His two books I can't recommend enough to you: Options Made Simple, which is available on Amazon, and The Red Pill, which is available on sanghvi.com. You can download that for free. They're just fantastic books, short, straight to the point, no jargon. And thank you again, Sanghvi, for being here, also known as Anand. We got to meet at Traders for a Cause, and he is one of the best MCs I've ever seen in action, never mind just a stand-up, funny as hell guy. So I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kim, for inviting me and for that lovely introduction. Thank you.
Well, I just thought, first of all, everybody, I've been trying to have this man do a podcast with me since 2021. Shout out to Anthony Nito, also of Investors Underground, for putting a tweet out there after his amazing interview with you. Announced that with Anthony a couple of I guess it's now a couple of months ago. And so shout out to you, Anthony, for making that happen and getting that tweet out there for me. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is always about mindset. I know how much you prioritize that, what you say about that being important to a trader's success. As an executive coach and trading coach, of course, that's something I advocate all the time, that mindset can have such a big impact on one's trading. But I also, felt it would be really valuable to have you speak and help traders understand where do we go from here with what's happened with FTX. So I know we just spoke a little bit about that on the video podcast portion we recorded, but if you don't mind repeating a little bit of yourself, just let's talk a little bit about FTX and what your advice would be to the traders and or investors that are here in our room now, who are perhaps still kind of shaking their head over what just went down in a very short amount of time.
I mean, it's still going down. It's still going down. The ex-CEO, Sam Bankman-Fried, is still out there tweeting at large. It was reported actually that he took a plane to Argentina. These guys were in the Bahamas. They set up their shop in the Bahamas. And coincidentally, there's a good amount of people that travel back and forth from Puerto Rico to Bahamas. So the community in Bahamas, let's just say, is extremely small, and everybody knows each other, just like it is in Puerto Rico. So I've heard a good amount from what happens, or what the office is kind of like, the employees down there. I've heard a good amount from the inside, so to speak. But the guy's still out there. He's still tweeting. They don't have enough to cover the customer funds, which I'm a customer, and I couldn't get my money out in time. Ironically, actually, I'll go through a trade, and the reason why I needed to stay in there was because they have these products called tokenized stocks, right? So basically what they are It's some form of paper that gives you ownership to some assets, right? So if you buy 100 shares of Tesla, you own 100 shares of Tesla, okay? Now, if you buy 100 shares of a tokenized stock, you don't technically own 100 shares of Tesla. I'm not sure what stake you actually do own, but they were able to take the asset of the shares of the company, tokenize them, put them on the blockchain basically, and then create these sort of futures products based around these assets. Now, I don't know the technicalities of these assets. Remember, they're being created by quants and people that are way smarter than we are. And how they build them, I have no freaking idea. However, because it was on FTX, they were able to offer a ridiculous amount of leverage, okay? Because this is an unregulated environment, they operate outside the US and all this kind of stuff. So I was using the tokenized stock to short GameStop because I didn't want to take up buying power in one of my main accounts, right? So I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. Because I'm using a good 7 figures to sell options and trade and all that kind of stuff in US equities, I'm just going to take a couple $100,000, put it in FTX, and short the living shit out of GME, right? Because I can get 20 times leverage in there. So I can short 30,000 shares, 40,000 shares, 50,000 shares, sometimes even 100,000 shares of GME. And I'm like, this thing's going to $15. So I'm going to put that trade in FTX. I'm just going to hold it here until it plays out. Now, if you hold the coins on exchange, which is what I did, of course, because I'm an active trader in there, all that money was being put to work. You're at risk, right, for these kinds of things. So, again, the cheesy thing to say in this kind of situation is don't leave your crypto on the exchange. The problem is this is FTX we were talking about, so similar to the Bernie Madoffs and similar to all the other largest scams in the world. People just couldn't believe that it could have happened. They were so present. They were so visible in everybody's life. I mean, you went to Miami, you went to a Miami Heat game, or you went to any game in Miami, you would see FTX. You went to go see F1 Sports or whatever, you would see FTX. You went to go, wherever the hell you wanted to go, you would see FTX. Baseball, like the umpires had freaking FTX on their shirts, man. Soccer teams had FTX on their shirts. So you infiltrate so much and you're sitting in plain sight. And because of his aggressive trading, aggressive market making on his research arm of the business, which is called Alameda Research and Trading. And by the way, these guys produced billions of dollars in cash from market making, arbitrage, and all this kind of stuff. This was Sam Bankman-Fried's specialty. He started at Jane Street Trading, which was in New York. And this was a very infamous prop trading firm in New York City. And they did extremely well. Of course, it only takes one trade or a couple bad situations to happen. They were over levered on basically a token that they hold in house. So there was a lot of commingling of funds and everything. He was using the customer deposits to get the leverage. And then, of course, it was a house of cards. It was a house of cards at some point. So once people saw the balance sheet, they started to sell their FTT position. And the value of that position went to friggin' nothing. And so did the value of the company. We're talking about a company worth $15 billion vanished in a couple days. Ridiculous.
What do you feel the pieces are that we need to pay attention to? We were talking a little bit just about how we forget so quickly as people, perhaps traders forget so quickly, investors forget so quickly. What do you say to yourself even around this loss in a way that helps you prepare or potentially be careful the next time? Is there even anything here one could say to themselves?
It's like if I answer this question, given the conversation that we just had, Kim, it's kind of like it's kind of like you'll see. I guess let me explain the conversation. The conversation we were having before we got on Twitter Spaces was just how quickly we human beings kind of forget these really substantial events in our history. And it's not like we forget them, but we forget the feeling of them. We forget that they happen. We kind of forget that we kind of allow ourselves to be fooled again. You know, we kind of allow ourselves to believe, right, in these sort of myths out here. And it's a difficult thing. I think we as human beings, like we hear about these things. We want to feel connected to everybody else. So we love the trends. We love all that kind of stuff. We love being a part of it. And FTX was no different, you know, but at the same time, it came off the backs of, you know, the who's the guy, the Bernie Madoff, or the 2008, you know, banking crisis here, where, you know, they duped everybody into mortgages and ridiculous variable rate interest nonsense, and, you know, all for a buck. And we do these things over and over and over and over, and we seem to forget about them, and we seem to allow ourselves to be in that situation again. So if I gave the advice of, hey, remember what happened 10 years ago, we're human, right? So being reminded of the fact that you should remember means automatically that you ain't gonna freaking remember, or you're not gonna feel that way, or you're not gonna remember what it felt like. You're just going to easily roll right into the next thing, como si no fuera nada. Excuse me. Sometimes now I'm in Puerto Rico, so I'm used to speaking Spanish, like it was nothing, like it was literally nothing, you know. So
Yeah.
I think you have to move a lot quicker. I think you have to move a lot faster. I think you have to think about risk way more than you do about the actual trade, about all that kind of stuff. I think you have to play defense a lot. I think you have to learn these things. I think you have to really learn how to play defense, how to not be in the game, how to trust your instincts. You know, but again, these are all things that human beings try to do well and will get caught. And I think the real lesson here is to say to yourself that it's okay, man. It's okay. If you do get caught up in some of these things, it's okay. You know, it's not the end of the world. You're going to survive. You'll be fine. You know, you just got to pick up the pieces again, kind of thing. You know, I think that's the better advice.
Yeah, so really, really good advice. And also very much of like an enlightened experience advice, because there's a stoicism to loss is part of trading, and protecting, like you said, being sure that your risk is something you can manage so that you don't find yourself dead, so to speak.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
If you guys like this conversation, know that it'll be fully released in about a week or so on the Wall Street Coach podcast. If you are thinking this is of value, please send out some tweets, tagging St. Lucie, of course, that we're in this Twitter space. We'd like to get as many traders in the room that can benefit from his wisdom, because he has a lot of wisdom. We're talking about FTX, but we're also talking about mindset. One of the things Anand is a huge advocate of is self-discovery, and that sense of being self-reflective, which as an executive coach and trading coach, I can tell you I'm all about. He speaks a lot in his two books, The Red Pill and Options Made Simple, about the importance of this. He even says in Options Made Simple that 90% of trading is mental, and it's about finding out about yourself as much as it is about the mechanics. These are all quotes from your book. I have about 15 bullets, and they're all things that I'm 100% in agreement around. Where do you feel that wisdom came and landed for you? You've been trading a long time now, 16 years. Where and when did that start to all kind of gel for you, for yourself and your own journey?
It started super early. Now that I had some time to think about it started super early. To be honest, it wasn't even my credits, so to speak. The prop firm that I started at, they never actually taught trading. You know what they taught? They said the only books that you should ever read about trading are psychology books, right? So it was required reading that everybody had to read Mark Douglas, Trading in the Zone, right? That was the one book that everybody had to read, right? Before you even started, like you had to read that book. And then once you read that book and then you play the game and you start the game, so to speak, then you start to realize like, oh, you know, I'm forcing trades 90% of the time, or I'm over trading 90% of the time, or I'm oversized 90% of the time, or, I'm bringing my emotions to the market, or, all that kind of stuff. Like, you start realizing it in real time. So pretty soon after I started trading, maybe a year or change, at some point you start to realize, like, okay, you can play the game, right? I mean, I'll make a tennis reference to this one. I play a lot of tennis. I happen to be in Aruba right now, playing in a beach tennis tournament. I play on Friday over the weekend, and I played a higher level than me. So I played a much higher level than me, and I got smoked. But you know what I realized? Like, I can get to that level. You start to see what you have to do to get to that level. And all it is more attention, more awareness, and more practice, right? But in the sense of mind and body, right? So you can have all the technique in the world, but if your mind is not in sync with your body, then you're off a split step, or you're off a couple of seconds, or you're going to make the wrong shot when you need to make a different shot. You're going to do a lot of things that you shouldn't have done, kind of thing. Similar to trading, right? Tennis and trading to me are extremely similar in the sense that you have to make a decision within a split second, less than a second, and you have to live with the consequences of that decision, right? And then you have to calculate so many other things. Where are my feet? Is my body turned? How much spin do I want to put on the ball? Where the hell do I want to put it? How much speed are we talking about? Where is the player on the other side? Is he at the back side of the court? Is he at the front side of the court? Do I have room for a passing shot, right? So you got to think about like 100 things at one time, and your body has to instinctually make a decision in a fraction of a second, and your instinct has to be trained, So in my head, when I'm looking at these better players, I can play as good as them. My body can play as good as them. But my mind and my body, that connection is not there yet. It's not trained yet. It's not trained to think at the speed that they're able to think at, and they're able to make those decisions at. So, that's kind of where I got down to, because once you can make a winning trade, then that's it. Like, you can replicate that shit over and over and over again. It's not about finding the winning trade. That's never the problem, right? We got plenty of winners. I got plenty of winners every freaking day. I can find a winner every day. That's not the problem. Can I not put myself in a loser? Can I sell something when I need to sell something? Are my instincts allowing me to do so, or are my emotions taking over? And am I making decisions that I shouldn't be making because now I'm swamped with emotion here? So that's kind of, it started pretty early for me, and now I think I'm evolving to a place where I want to create a world of hybrid automation and hand click trading, because I think there's some things that human beings just can't do well 100% of the time, even 90% of the time, even 80% of the time, 70% of the time. And imagine just being able to be 10% better, 5% better. What does that look like in your bottom line at the end of the year? So that's kind of where I'm at these days. And of course you could go. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
You could go to 100% automated trading, right? You could play that game, but if you play that game, remember, now you're a part of that game, and that game requires different inputs. You got to learn how to code. You got to learn how to change your code all the time. You got to learn how to adapt it all the time. Otherwise, shit, I invested several $1 million while I was in New York running that hedge fund into automated high frequency strategies with guys that graduated from Yale and went to Goldman Sachs and worked as quants at UBS and all that kind of stuff. And guess what? Their code was a fold after a year or 2 years. Why? Because your strategy is only good as your code. So if you're not able to see the market for what it is, then you can't write good code on it. So, it's like, do you want to be 100% human hand trader, which can work? Sure. I've done pretty well at it. Am I at my best? Hell no. Am I even close? Hell no. Or do you go 100% automated? No. So I want to find a 50-50, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, the other thing you speak to in your books, and as you were naming earlier, just some of the places of the challenge, is how to deal with loss. That's what I'm also so impressed with, how you navigated FTX, your stoicism of knowing that that's part of being a trader. And even in your books, you talk about getting comfortable with loss, expect to fail every single day as a trader, and get comfortable with it, get familiar with it so that it doesn't throw you off your game. That, I think, is where we're talking enlightenment, right? Consciousness, being able to be attached and unattached at the same time, we were talking about before. So just talk a little bit about how you found your way to taking a loss like you did with FTX in stride.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so, it's not, I don't want to say I'm like, I'm numb to it. Of course, it's, a loss is a loss, but after a while, after a good amount of time, after seeing enough out there, you start building your life around these sort of events, right? You start playing the game strategically, knowing that at some point this is going to happen. Something like an FTX is going to happen to you. Something like, a bad loss or something like that is going to happen to you. It's coming. It's coming for all of us, if it hasn't already. And, you start thinking strategically, you start thinking smarter after you've sat in the face of one of those things and you felt all those feelings, the depression, the overeating that you may do, the sadness, the climbing back to the top, which is arguably the most difficult piece of that process. You after seeing that several times, you start to realize that, it's about the longevity. It really is about the longevity. How do you preserve your seat at the table? That's the most important thing. At the end of the day, that is the most important thing. How do you preserve that seat at the table? And in order to do that, you start finding new ways to do risk management, not on your trading per se, but on yourself. You know what I mean? So if you feel certain things in your body, you start to be aware of them. Everything is about self-awareness at the end of the day. So as you become more self-aware, and I think 2018, 2019, I became super self-aware. I kind of went through this process within kind of thing. And you start to realize what's really important, what's not important, and that's how you kind of build upon that. So, a loser here and there, it's never going to kill me. It's not even going to come close. Even if it's a big loser, at the end of the day, like, I'm still strong.
Can I ask you what happened in 2019 during that period where the self-awareness grew even exponentially?
Oh yeah. I think I was on the climb back after a big blow up in 2015. I was on the climb back. Well, let me rephrase this, right? Big blow up in 2015. 2016 and 2017 were just straight depression for me. It was just it was just a blackout period, man. I think I slept till like 11 o'clock in the morning every single day. I didn't want to get up. I didn't even want to do anything. It was just kind of like you're rolling through each day, almost as if you weren't there or you didn't want to be there, And then like you've done so much self-loathing that you can't go down anymore. And then you start to realize, like, all right, screw it. Let me give it another shot. You know what? Believe it or not, it was a girl. It was a girl that I met. I thought she was the one. She kind of, the fact that she appeared gave me this sort of lift, right? And it was just kind of this kick in the ass, like, all right, bro, how the hell are you even going to support a family, if you're at your house and you're doing nothing? So it was just kind of this slap to the face kind of thing, where it was just like, all right, you got to do something, man. You got to get up and do something. So and then once you pick yourself back up and you start to forget about, those things that brought you down, and you start not feeding those emotions, the depression emotions, the, the self-loathing emotions, the self-doubt emotions, the, the the sadness and the self-loathing and all that kind of stuff. Once you start to feed the different side, you go to work out, you start running again. I think I started running again. I got up to like 7-8 miles, which I've never been able to do ever. And then once I got to 8 miles, it was like nothing. I could have done like 12. I could have done 13. And I remember that day I was sitting there looking at my body. I was sitting there at home, coming home after running 8 miles. And stopping, like I had stopped at 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles for months. You know what I mean? It was just kind of that mental stop that you just kind of do to yourself. And you're just like, oh, I can't go anymore. But in reality, your body can push through so much shit that you have no idea. And trading is a way to find what your body limits are and what your mind limits are, right? So once I was able to push through that, it was just kind of like, all right, man, you got your confidence back. You got your swag back. You know what I mean? I started to walk around a little bit more. I started to go out a little bit more. I started to have fun again. And then once all those things came back, man, you couldn't stop me. Then I was like, all right, I know where this is going. I know I'm about to hit this. I know I'm about to hit it again, right? So I knew it was coming. So I was like, screw it. I'm moving to Puerto Rico. I'm going to be so smart about this. I'm moving to Puerto Rico. I'm going to go ahead and set up my structure, set up all my businesses so airtight so that even if I lose, I can't freaking lose. And by that time that I moved down there, maybe 3, 4, 5 months after, I made a couple million. And, and then it's just, and then you know what happened to me, Kim? After I made that, I made a couple, I didn't feel anything. Like I didn't feel good. I didn't feel bad. I just didn't feel anything. So then it was like, all right, you did all this, again, maybe I don't give myself enough credit or whatever, but you did all this. You went through all this shit to feel nothing, So then I kind of went through this period of just this kind of self-inspection kind of thing, and just going within and trying to figure out what makes me tick, and where I come from, what my childhood was, and all these things about my parents, my grandparents. You start to look at all that stuff. You start to see where all the programming came from and why we are the way we are. And then you start to, and then you look beyond all this stuff and you realize, like, I can live a great life with nothing. I can live a great life with nothing. I can live a great life with everything. And when I say nothing and everything, like I'm kind of talking about materialistic things and money per se. So then after that, once I hit that place, a loss might hit me for 30 minutes or an hour or something like that. But then I'm over it. It's all good.
Yeah. It's thank you so much for being so honest about that journey you went through, because I suspect more people go through it than we realize, but very few people are willing to be so honest about how dark it can get during those, patches of loss, patches of grief, depression. What do you feel is I understand that this woman came into your life and that kind of like, she said, slapped you in the face with like, hey, do I want to go for this, so to speak? But what else do you think facilitated do you think perhaps just going through the journey of that darkness just has to be gone through for some people, for all of us, perhaps at different points in our life, and that gets us to the other side?
Yeah, some would argue that you don't have to. That if you have discipline, you can avoid those pitfalls, right? So if you have plenty of discipline, something as easy as going to the gym on a regular basis can kind of avoid you feeding into. The whole problem is us spending too much time feeding into emotions that don't serve us and that will never serve us, And we feed into these things. We think we're failures. We think we've lost and we can't get back. We think so many things about ourselves that are just not true, And then even on the flip side too, we think so many arrogant things about ourselves that are just not true as well, So we sit there in this sort of in our sort of subconscious. And then these create these emotions that we sit there and we feed into. And in reality, like, if you can bypass all that and stay disciplined and just do what you have to do, regardless of what emotions you feel, it kind of does cut that curve down. It kind of does cut that curve down quite a bit, and I think that's where we see the disparity, or the disparity between the human being, right? There's some human beings, especially kids, they get bullied, all of a sudden they commit suicide. You know what I mean? Or and I'm talking about extreme cases here.
Yes.
Things that happen in their lives, they go ahead and kill themselves, or they go to the extreme. Either way, one way or the other. And what
that
you see,
muscle isn't strengthened in a lot of young people.
Exactly. So, it's that kind of thing, back and forth. But you can avoid some of that by just staying disciplined. But some people, it's harder than others. For me, it's extremely difficult to stay disciplined. I'm telling you, it is extremely difficult. And sometimes I look at other people and I'm like, how the hell can these people be so freaking disciplined and I can't get even an ounce of that shit? You know what I mean? So sometimes I'll get super frustrated at myself and be like, dude, why can't you just do that? But we're all different. And you can't be.
I have to say, sometimes, I'll be honest with you, what appears to the surface or to an outsider as discipline could actually be their version of numbing themselves.
Sure. There's that as well,
Right? So it looks like discipline, but if that becomes a way that they numb out the hard to be with feelings. And the other thing too, I just want to speak to, and I talked about this when we did that panel conversation at Traders for a Cause, is that inner voice that keeps us feeling shitty about ourselves is that inner saboteur, inner critic, inner gremlin. And one of the most profound books I've read for my own journey, never mind what I recommend to clients, is that book, Taming Your Gremlin, to be able to finally recognize that your own inner voice is not the one that's making you feel shitty about yourself. It's usually that inner critic.
Yeah, absolutely. So learning how to control that has also been super pivotal, in my recent years. It's just realizing some of the emotions that I have. It's just waking up and being like, hold on. What am I even feeling right now? Why am I even choosing to feel this right now? Let's move on, and let's go and try to feel something else. You can choose it. So I'm starting to flex those muscles now, and I'm talking about proverbial, or the subconscious muscles. I'm not walking around here with a bunch of muscles and all that.
The most important muscles you're working on.
Exactly.
You've already done so much work on them. I know we're a little bit over time, but I want to get questions from all of our people in the room, just to revisit, guys. This is part 2 of conversation and podcast with Sanlucci, also known as Anand Sanghvi. And we are going to be releasing this podcast, which includes a Zoom video part 1 that he and I recorded before we came to Twitter Space. If you guys do have questions for him, please raise your hand in the Twitter Space and I'll be able to give you the microphone. One of the things I did want to speak to is there's 2 books available for you that he's written that are amazing. One of them is called The Red Pill. That's for free on his website, sanlucci.com. Highly recommend it. No jargon, straight from the hip. Also fucking hilarious, excuse my French. Options Made Simple, which is on Amazon. Well, I'm hoping to get some questions, especially from you, Bryce. I'm going to call you out for a question. I want to also have you just tell a story that last night when I read it in this book, I literally snorted. I laughed so hard. I was all by myself. I have a few people who are looking at me like, this girl has lost her mind. Please tell us the Usher story, potential versus reality, because that story is hilarious. I've never heard that before.
Oh man, I remember.
Please.
I forget who told it to me. Of course, we're just passing this stuff on. I think it was a different story. And then you have to change the names, right? Because This
Oh,
day and
that's
age, ain't
true.
nobody gonna remember Usher. You know what I mean? So you gotta change it to like a Drake or something like that.
I'll remember Usher. All right, who's today's modern version of Usher, for God's sakes?
Let's call him. I don't know. Let's call it Drake for lack
Okay.
of a better option. The joke was like, what's the difference between reality and perception, right? And it's like people perceive so many things about themselves, right? And they say, oh, I can do this and I can do that, but the reality is it's a completely different situation, right? So I think the joke went something like, the son goes to the father, hey, what's the difference, between reality and perception, and the father tells the son, okay, son, you really want to know the difference between these two things. Okay, go ask your mother if she would sleep with Drake for $2 million, right? So the son goes and asks mom, would you sleep with Drake for $2 million? And she's like, I don't even know who he is, but we need the money, so yeah, fine. I'd sleep with Drake for $2 million. And so the son goes back to the father and tells the father, and the father's like, all right, son, now go ask your sister. Go ask your sister if she would sleep with Drake for $2 million. And son goes to the sister and asks the sister, hey, would you sleep with Drake for $2 million? And she says, fuck yeah, of course I'll sleep with Drake for $2 million. You don't even have to give me the $2 million. I'll sleep with Drake for free, but I'll get $2 million. Of course. Son goes back to the father, tells the father, and the father says, all right, son, here's the difference between reality and perception, right? Potentially, and it was reality and potential, right?
Potential. Right.
Potentially, we're sitting on $4 million. We're sitting on $4 million, son. But in reality, we just got a couple of hoes living in this house. That's the reality of the situation.
Oh my God, it's brilliant because that potential of we're sitting on $4 million. I think a lot of traders tell themselves all the
Yes,
time, and
yes.
that's what they're looking at their charts from the perspective of I could potentially make this, I could potentially make that, but the reality is something far more crude.
Something far more crude, indeed. I totally forgot about that joke. I didn't know I even put it in there. Wow, I put it in there. Wow. You know
That's
what
again,
else I was
options
really good
remain
at,
simple.
Kim? You know what else I was really good at, man? I was really good at writing. I stopped writing. Because
You're
I
an
can't sit
excellent
down.
writer.
I
You're an
can't sit
excellent
down
writer.
anymore and just put the words on the paper. My mind's in so many different places. I just can't sit down and put words on paper. So I think
That's
I'll
how you
live a little
start.
bit more. And when I'm done with all this shit, I'll write part 2, part 3 or something.
You're an excellent writer, truly. I read a lot, and I was stunned at how you used no jargon. You write so clear and it's so enlightening and so simple. And I don't mean simple in any way, but as a compliment. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people, when they try to explain this universe, use very complex $3 words, and it just
Yeah.
alienates people, and it's not necessary. So they're just really clean. I mean, I've laughed out loud at least 3 or 4 times between the two of these books, which doesn't happen often, I have to tell you. So brilliant. And look, we have Nate in the room. Hi, Nate. Do you have a question, Nate, for Sangucci? Please open us up with a question. We haven't had any questions come in yet. So, Nate,
How do you get
you
questions on here? So how does that work?
people have to raise their hands, and then I give them the mic, and
Oh,
once they have the mic, they can verbally just come on and ask a question.
that's
So,
super
Nate,
cool. All right. Hook it up,
I
guys.
just
Hook it up, guys.
highlighted you too.
There's a good 60,
I just
70 people in here. Hook it up, guys.
Exactly. And if you guys are enjoying this conversation, he's giving us a lot of time on today, way more than I expected. So please tweet it out that this conversation's happening. He's dropped a lot of wisdom so far about FTX, about mindset of trading. The full conversation will release on the Wall Street Coach podcast with me, Ann Curtin, in a week or two. Please put I'm trying to add you as a speaker here. Let's see. You want to unmute your mic? I don't even see your name here on Twitter, so please unmute your mic. You're live to ask a question of Anand.
Back in trader.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. You're live.
Hi. How are you guys?
Very good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, just want to give a good shout out. So I personally took Sang's course in 2020, the master course. And when you folks were talking about, this is a fully psychological game, which it absolutely is. I mean, specifically for myself, that is probably one of the best courses that one could go through. Of course, I'm not getting a shameless plug or anything like that, but just the psychological portion alone is worth the value of that course. Like, there's nobody that does it any better than that man. Maybe it could be an age thing because, we're around the same age or whatever, but highly recommend just for that piece alone, the psychological aspects. I don't think there's anybody else out there that really does it better. That could break it down into the simplest forms of what we deal with on a daily basis. Like, no one really does that any better that I've come across, and been in the game since about 2008. But really, full time since 2020. So,
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Do you have a question that you want to ask him right now with regards to the topics we've been talking about, mindset and or FTX?
You know what? No. Just more of just a thank you of putting out that material and how helpful it could be, and be able to even revert back for some things that you forgot, and you can go back and revert and be like, awesome. Why didn't I? I should have remembered this. He said this, they said this.
That's great.
So,
thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. You guys have a good one.
You too. All right, do we have anybody else who has a question? We have a lot of people in the room. This is your opportunity to ask some probing questions, either about mindset or about your own journey as a trader or FTX. I'm inviting Nate to speak, but for some reason it's not popping up. So it could be that he's not able to see my invite. Does anybody else have a question? I have a couple of more questions myself, Anand. So one of the questions I had for you until somebody raises their hand, what is your advice to the seasoned traders that are out there now who are struggling in this market? Hell, before FTX, right, they've been struggling. What is it that you yourself practice or advocate to the traders that are in your community?
Honestly, for the seasoned cats, I'll always be a little bit more dry. It's like they've been around the block before. You know what I mean? They just need to remember who they are, right? And we lose our self-confidence sometimes, and we lose sight of what we're good at in a market that we don't understand. So I think the best advice is just, if you're in that place and you're sitting in that place right now, is just take it easy, man. Take it easy. Just sit off the keys as much as you possibly can. The problem is that we don't do that, right? We're so good because we sit there and we grind it out, so most of them are just going to be grinders anyway. So they'll just grind right through this and they'll make it out eventually. You know what I mean? So just remember, you're going to make it out. You will make it out fine at some point. You know what I mean? You just got to survive. Some periods are just more for survival and holding ground versus trying to produce and really trying to, hit home runs and things like that.
Nate, I want to ask him a question, but I'm just curious, are you a fan of that grinding through this, or would you be more of an advocate of, taking this opportunity to either develop a new strategy or just, rest and catch your breath?
I mean, my issue is, and again, this is my next generation. My next generation has to well, not really my next generation per se, but my next evolution is not to spread myself out too thin. So right now I have like 6 other businesses. And, you know, when you go through a downturn like this and you have all these other businesses, it worked for a while, because if you had a business that wasn't working, then chances are you got another business that is working, right? That's what diversification is. But if you hit a market like this, there's a high probability that ain't none of them working. You know what I mean? And if none of them are working, you know, now you're over levered just like everybody else is. Imagine somebody who has 50 Airbnbs, and all of a sudden by the end of the year, or let's say by the middle of next year, Airbnb prices tank by 40%. These guys are over levered on their properties. They ain't going to be able to pay the mortgages. And now all of a sudden you got a fire sale, right? Same shit that happens in crypto, which happens all the time. Company falls. Now you got a fire sale. You know, so those things are happening en masse right now. Those things are happening a lot right now in so many different businesses, people who just got over leveraged. So, you know, but again, here we go again with the human being question. Are we wired to do this? If we're wired to be over levered, then shit, this is what happens every single time. And we just forget about it. We forgot about .com boom, where bullshit companies were valued at, you know, at 100x and 200x. And now here we are sitting here with crypto companies, ICOs, that are worth billions of dollars. They haven't produced a single dime in friggin' revenue, and they have no actual concept whatsoever. We hit that place. We hit that place again. And again, we want to believe, we want to overextend. We're wired as such, you know? So then it brings in the human being question. So shit, man. I think for me, my next evolution is number one, give myself more credit. Don't be too hard on yourself. And then number two, you know, try your best to not get over levered, man. Try your best.
Yeah. Nate, the mic is yours.
I just came in late. I was just listening to you guys talking, but no, I agree with a lot of pretty much everything that was saying, and especially right now, I think probably the most important time to save your cash and not bleed out. A lot of people start to chase, you know, what was working and chase what you know, they were good at in maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, 6 months ago, and before they really take a step back, you know, it's their account's already, you know, half or you know, down 75% or whatever. So I think capital preservation is obviously the most important aspect right now. And then when your market comes back, that's when you strike. And that's you know, for me, the last 3-4 weeks have probably been the slowest all year. But then this week, the last 3 days have been some of the best days that I've had in maybe like 4 or 5 months. So you just have to kind of get good at sitting on your hands when things are not in your wheelhouse. And I used to have a lot of trouble doing that. But I think the best traders are literally off the market right now, not pushing buttons just because, you know, that's what they know to do.
Saying, what is your thoughts about what Nate's saying?
Nate's the man. So, you know, he just,
when did you guys meet? When did you guys meet?
Whatever, the man spits gold. When did we meet? We met in New Hampshire. I don't know where the hell we met, Nate. I really don't know. I don't
know if it used to be like, I don't know if it was back with like Sykes type stuff, or if it was something when you were on Twitter and you're like, hey, I'm coming home. And then it was, I mean, I know we did dinner in like Andover or something that night when you had first come home after long.
We knew each other before. Yeah.
But that was really like when we started to trade together and, you know, do the office and stuff. That was, I don't even know how long ago that was.
Yeah, man. Highly recommend Nate's crew over there at Investors Live. I've actually started to pop into their chat quite often, actually. So I'll listen to the stuff that they're trading. These guys trade so many different freaking names at the same fucking time. I don't know how they do it, man. I only look at one or two. Like Nate's over there trading like 6 names, and then everybody in the room is just shouting out so much different stuff. So I gotta learn how to drill down my focus. But they do great scans, and I've started to look at different strategies because, of course, in this type of market, you got to look at different stuff. You know, so I've actually started to look at the small cap world, the micro cap world, mid cap stuff, you know, and you know, start to use my tape reading skills for some of that stuff. So always big shout out to Nate. Such a good dude.
I'm excited about tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a webinar for Investors Underground at 6:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. So I'm very excited and just looking forward to being in that amazing room. Nate's group, the members that are there are just, man, they just really have each other's backs. And I really think that comes from the leader down. And I imagine that's the case for you too, Anand. Like, you guys are the real deals. You're the real.
They got mods. Like he's got heavy hitters in there too, though. So it's not only Nate. It's not only Nate. You're getting like a list. You're getting a list of solid traders that are in there every single day. And then you know what I found out too? And again, this is all from me being in Puerto Rico, sitting on a desk. And by the way, I came up with this whole concept. I came up with the whole concept for TradeSpace because of sitting next to Nate. Like that was the impetus for the whole idea of TradeSpace. Because sitting next to Nate, I didn't even, you know, it's not like we spoke to each other every single second, but it was just sharing what we were trading. It was just talking. It's just the random conversations, you know, that we would have during the day. And then just even going to lunch together and it was just me and him in that office of his in New Hampshire. And we would just sit there and what's that?
Let me say this. You say it in the red pill. You said the 3 top important things to do: find a community, start working on yourself, get your finances in order. So what was it about your time together that facilitated that clarity, that community aspect benefited your trading, both of you? If you're cool answer too, Nate.
It's just what it was. So now picture in Puerto Rico, right? Picture anywhere. You got 15, 16 desks, right? Everybody has a bunch of monitors. Everybody's trading different things, and everybody's just kind of interacting. You know what I mean? And it's just like if it's just these intangible moments that you cannot put a price on. You cannot put a number on. You cannot put a service on, right? Like I can't sit there and charge a subscription service for it because you don't know what it is until you feel it, until you feel the energy. And then when you're there on a desk where truly everybody's just kind of, you know, everybody's just a real trader and they're just doing what they do, but they're doing it next to people who are real traders as well, who can support each other, who can at least just kind of talk to each other, who can spend time together, you know, who can, you know, you can join families and things like that. You know, then it becomes a much more fulfilling experience to be a trader. Right now, to be a trader, and you're sitting at your house or you're sitting there on your phone and all that kind of stuff, you don't really, you know, you got people that you're talking to in a fucking chat room. Okay, fine. But we're not so detached like some of these young kids who are having digital relationships with people who are 2,000 miles away, or they just live on TikTok and things like that. There's an intangible value to sitting next to somebody who trades, and it doesn't really matter what level that they are at. It just matters that they're serious and that they want to add value to a community. You know, that's really all that it means. And Nate had some of his other buddies in there in the office too, you know, and we'd have some really good days in there. And that was the impetus. That was what started the idea for TradeSpace to me. Now I want to put one everywhere. I really want to put one everywhere, but I want to start outside of the U.S. I want to start in Latin America, Mexico City, DR, Colombia, you know, London, Africa, India, you know, a lot of different places, because there's so much you can learn, man. I was sitting next to this kid who trades crypto. He's 23. The kid showed me these futures products, and immediately I was like, this shit exists. Are you kidding me? I put a $10,000 account up and I made $1 million in 3 months, you know, just because of that kid sitting next to me. And I didn't know this kid. But he was sitting next to me, and that was enough. We were family. We are family. Yeah. You know what I mean? I can hit him up. He can hit me up. I can hit Nate up anytime. You sit in a community like that, you become family. And that is what gives you the value over time. Forget about right now. Over time, it's what gives you the value. Like Nate and I have such a dope relationship over the years that, we hit each other up for biz, we hit each other for family shit, we hit each other up to talk about kids. The boys got advice, I got advice. You never know. You never know. But you have these people in your wheelhouse, and everything is about resources and information. If you don't have that shit, man, you punting around here with it's going to be tough for you.
Tell us about your trading space for those who are interested. What do they need to know? How do they get in touch with you to be considered?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it really is just a co-working space. That's it. It works just like a co-working space. So there's to be considered. I have like a proprietary futures trading arm where I'll allow you to trade under, my leverage or the company's account. If you show me some good data and all that kind of stuff, but that's a whole nother thing. But it works just like a co-working space. Anybody can show up. Go to tradespace.us and go ahead and register, and you can book. You can take a look at the calendar, see what's available, and bring your ass down to PR. Just come have some fun with us. PR is a beautiful place. We trade. We go to the beach. We play tennis. Oh, the beach is beautiful. Freaking 5 minutes away.
One of the things you did during that hurricane that happened was you opened up that office to let people come in and take showers and, just have a space to have electricity and charge. That your sensitivity to giving back is really big. I'm just curious, has that always been a part of kind of how you've rolled? Is it something you realized the importance of as you got older? It just feels like you really come from a place of generosity. So even how you are with traders and the way you respond to them on Twitter, talk a little bit about that if you would.
I think I've always given back to the trading community per se, just because I don't like how the trading community gets taken advantage of on a daily basis by scammers and by financial quote unquote gurus, and all that kind of stuff. It's a difficult place. Finance, I think in general is difficult for the regular retail person, and I think I've always given back from that sense, but I've always been relatively selfish per se. I think maybe after 2018, 2019 is when I really changed, some of that selfishness into unselfishness. I'm still kind of selfish, to be quite honest, but it's a little bit more unselfishness per se. I mean, both Nate and I, we love doing these kinds of things now because we get more purpose out of them. Like right now, I got a bunch of kids in the office, young kids, they're super smart. They got so many skills. They don't want to go to the States, to find jobs because they don't want to be away from their families. But at the same time, they can't find jobs in PR because there's not too many opportunities over there. So I got a bunch of kids at the office. So I always roll around with a bunch of the young bucks, man. Because some of the young bucks when they hit, they fly, man. So I like having a bunch of young bucks around me. And that keeps me young too. It keeps me around. I mean, the kid that I'm playing beach tennis with over here, he's 19. The kid's playing with the best players in the world, and the kid's, he's just a regular kid from Puerto Rico, and he's super smart, super athletic, and he's 19. I'm double his age. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to keep up with him. That's it.
One of the things you say a lot, you talk about how the market's bigger and more powerful than any individual trader, and that the respect of that awesome power can be used to a trader's advantage. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I don't. Could rephrase that one for me. Where did you catch that one?
Sure. This is in Options Made Simple. You talk a lot about how the respect, so to speak, that the market is worthy of at all times, in spite of how big or successful a trader may get. That's the importance.
100%. They have a saying in Puerto Rico. It's called "respete el agua," right? And that means like you respect the water, right? The water is a beautiful, calming thing, but at the same time, like it's a very dangerous force. You know what I mean? And if you don't respect it, if you're driving a boat, for example, or you're on a jet ski, or you're on a paddle board, or you're in the rainforest, for example, in some water, and all of a sudden it starts to rain, the flood warnings will go out, and some of the rivers will rise really, really, really rapidly, and you have to respect this water, because there are forces beyond your control. There are things that you cannot foresee. There are things that you cannot plan for. It is not a constant thing. It is not a consistent thing. Water is always changing. Markets are always changing. If you don't respect it, no matter how far you've gotten, it doesn't matter. We've seen people reach billions of dollars and lose it overnight. So you think you making 10 mil, 5 mil, or whatever is something? At the end of the day, you are just a number. It is just a number. You are responsible for how you feel and what you feel your worth is and all that kind of stuff, despite the money that you may or may not have, So at the end of the day, your card can be pulled tomorrow, today, in the moment right after, so you have to respect that.
We're talking to Sanghvi, which is part 2 of a podcast with the Wall Street Coach. I'm Ann Curtin, and this will be released in 2 parts because we got to do some video conversation with Sanghvi. If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand in the room and I'll be able to give you the microphone. We've kept you a really long time. I'm going to start to wind it down. I appreciate you taking some, time away from being in Aruba and enjoying it. To be a contribution to all the traders that are listening to us now. So thank you so much, Anand. In the meantime, one question left that I wanted to ask you to talk about is this concept you speak about, that trading can become so difficult. It can become even more difficult if you're seeking money alone. And you talk about that in the red pill a little bit. See, if you would just elaborate how that can kind of get in the way, and how even you yourself kind of journeyed past that to kind of transcend it, if you will.
You mean the journey of trading alone kind of thing?
Yeah, you talked about how many of the traders want money because it affords them time and opportunity to understand and work on themselves. Yet the odds of achieving that success, you said, is really low unless you understand and work on themselves, not just to have the motivation just simply be money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Nate and I will talk about this, all the time, and some of the best traders that I'll speak to, this is the main thing that they talk about. I remember on the plane back from Vegas, me and Nate, I think we're talking to, I think it was Jack. I think it was Kellogg, maybe. I think it was Kellogg and his wife or fiance. I think Jack was talking about more, getting away from the markets a little bit more, working on himself a little bit more. And when you're young, when you're super young, 20, like Jack, I think is 24, 25 even, or something like that. Has been doing really well. When you're that young, you have tunnel vision. You know what I'm saying? You want what you want. You're going after what you want, and that's it. You don't see anything else. And then when you hit it, that's when your real life starts, right? That's when you really realize, like, holy shit. Now I got to figure out, number one, what the hell to do with it. Now I got to figure out how to live a life, right? Because you've been doing this one thing for so long, all day, every day, you kind of forgot about yourself, who you are outside of that, right? You have things that made you before trading came along. And you're always going to go back to those things. You are always going to go back to those things. Mark my words, you will always go back to those things, whether you like playing guitar or you like hanging out with your friends or, whatever the hell it is. You're always going to go back to that because besides the money, that's who you are, So it's, again, very easy to forget in the middle of the money chase, but you got to try hard not to lose yourself. And if you do, it's okay. There's plenty of time to find yourself too, and there's plenty of ways to do it.
This has been an amazing conversation. I can't wait to release it. We're going to have it ready for you guys in probably a week or two. It'll be on the Wall Street Coach podcast. It'll drop on all the platforms. It'll be 30 minutes of a video where we got into FTX quite a bit at the start of that video interview. And then this recording will be edited into it. Anand, I can't thank you enough for coming in here and being so willing to share so much of your wisdom. You have so much humility and such an excellent sense of humor. You never take yourself too seriously, which is just so refreshing. I just really appreciate your whole kind of modus operandi. It's really quite special. So just thank you for today so much.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm gonna go catch some beach tennis games and enjoy Aruba.
Enjoy it, and look forward to having you all hear the whole podcast with Anand in a week or so. Take good care and aloha for now.
All right. Take care, Kim. Thank you. Bye-bye.